Good afternoon. 175 official war fatalities are buried in Dundonald Cemetery, 87 from the Great War and 88 from the Second World War. At least one Commonwealth War Graves headstone relates to the Battle of Albert, the opening days of the battles of the Somme 1916. 159 war fatalities are commemorated on family memorials in Dundonald Cemetery, 125 from the Great War and 34 from the Second World War. There are at least 104 fatalities from the German air raids of 1941 who are either buried or commemorated in Dundonald Cemetery. In this tour and talk, I'll be looking at just some of the fatalities from the battles of the Somme in July 1916 who are commemorated in the cemetery, and the one known related casualty who's buried in the cemetery. Samuel Shields was born on 2nd June 1892 at Seaford in County Down to Samuel Shields, who was a coachman, and Sarah McNeill. The family was living at Stronocum in County Antrim in 1901 and 1911, and later lived at Upper Frank Street in Belfast. Before the war, Samuel Shields was employed at Belfast Corporation's electrical power station, which was at the junction of Laganbank Road and East Bridge Street. He was a member of the East Belfast Regiment UVF and of the Albert Bridge Total Abstinence Orange Lodge. He enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles and held the rank of sergeant when he was posted to France with 8th Battalion in October 1915. He was 24 years old when he was posted missing on 2nd July 1916, but his death was not confirmed until June 1917. Sergeant Samuel Shields has no known grave and is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Locally, he is commemorated on the War Memorial tablet for Belfast Corporation. In November 1916, the London Gazette reported that Sergeant Shields had been awarded the Military Medal. Also on the memorial is commemorated his brother, William Shields. He had initially served overseas with 14th Battalion Manchester Regiment, but was serving as a lieutenant with 45 Squadron Royal Flying Corps when he was killed in action on 5th September 1917, aged 28. A third brother, Neil, served with 14th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles and survived the war. The Shields brothers are commemorated on the War Memorial organ in Willowfield Parish Church. Charles Frederick Green was born in Salford to Frederick John Green, a bailing master, and Jane Smith, and his birth was registered in Q1 of 1894, and the family later lived at Glenbrook Avenue in Belfast. At the outbreak of war, Private Green was stationed in Trimulgary in India with 1st Battalion Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers. The battalion was recalled to the UK, arriving at Avonmouth in January 1915 and departing for the Eastern Mediterranean in March. Private Green took part in the landings at Y Beach on the Gallipoli Peninsula on 25th April 1915. He was wounded on 9th May and on 20th July, being evacuated to Malta for medical attention on both occasions. The battalion left Gallipoli in January 1916 and arrived at Marseille in March 1916. The battalion was part of the 29th Division, which held the left flank of the Ulster Division on the opening of the Somme offensive. Charles Frederick Green held the rank of Lance Corporal when he was reported as missing on 1st July 1916, and his death was confirmed in March 1917. He was 23 years old, and there's no known grave, being commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Locally, he is commemorated on the memorial tablet in St Donald's Church of Ireland at Bloomfield. John Boyle was born on 29th May 1893 at Beaver Street to Robert Boyle, a mechanic, and Margaret Jane Hall, and the family later lived at Albert Bridge Road in 1911 and later again at Oakland Avenue. John Boyle was an iron moulder in 1911, and he enlisted with the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, being posted to the 9th Battalion on the Western Front after December 1915. He was 23 years old when he was reported as missing on 1st July 1916, and he was still missing in February 1917 when an appeal for information was published in the Ireland's Saturday night newspaper. John Boyle is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. There is a J. Boyle recorded on the Harland and Wolff Queen's Island Memorial, and this may be John Boyle. John Boyle is commemorated on the memorial tablet for the Ballymacarrat Methodist Circuit, the memorial now being in the Somme Museum at Conlig. Robert Francis Cooke was born on 17th November 1896 at Carrow Ray in County Donegal to Robert Humphreys Cooke, a merchant's clerk, and Frances Colquhoun. In 1911, the family was living at Park Terrace in Londonderry, and Robert Sr. was recorded as being a fish merchant, and Robert Jr. was recorded as being a fancy box maker. The family later lived at My Lady's Road in Belfast, and Robert Cooke enlisted with the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers and held the rank of Lance Corporal when he was deployed to France with 10th Battalion in October 1915. On 1st August 1916, the Londonderry Sentinel reported that Robert's parents had received a letter dated 26th July from the Reverend J.G. Patton, one of the Presbyterian chaplains. It is with deep regret that I write you of the death of your son in the Battle of 1st July. He was shot clean through the forehead, and so you have the satisfaction of knowing that he suffered no pain. He did his part nobly, gave his life for his country, and now you have your difficult part to play. I am sure you will be as brave as he was. We all send you our deep sympathy and pray that God will comfort you. Lance Corporal Cooke was 19 years old and is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Locally, he is commemorated on the City of Londonderry War Memorial and on the memorial tablets for Ballymacarrat Methodist Church and Carlisle Road Methodist Church in Londonderry. Duncan Darragh was born on 17th July 1899 at River Terrace in Belfast to Duncan Darragh, a commercial bookkeeper, and Letitia Robinson, and the family later lived at University Street in 1901, Canterbury Street in 1911, and Cromwell Road in 1916. In 1911, Duncan Darragh Jr. was recorded as being a salesman, and he was employed by John Arnott and Company when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles. He already held the rank of sergeant when he was deployed to France with 14th Battalion in October 1915. While Sergeant Darragh was in active service, his father died at Cromwell Road on 1st March 1916. Sergeant Darragh was 26 years old when he was posted missing on 1st July 1916, and his death was confirmed in April 1917. He is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France and on the memorial tablets for Ormer Road Methodist Church and for the 9th Boys Brigade Old Boys Association. John McCoy was born on 2nd August 1889 at Highland Street to Joseph McCoy, a rougher, and Elizabeth Tate, and the family home was at Blythe Street off Sandy Row in 1901 and at Majestic Street in 1911. Joseph McCoy had served with the 2nd Battalion Royal Irish Rifles, and John was recorded as being a clerk when he married Rebecca Cunningham on 6th January 1909 at Christchurch on College Square, but he is recorded as being a linen yarn dresser in the 1911 census when he was living with his in-laws at Vernon Street. John McCoy enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles and held the rank of corporal when he was deployed to France with 10th Battalion in October 1915. He was 26 when he was killed in action on 1st July 1916 and is buried in Dundonald Cemetery in Thiepval. He was survived by his wife and 3 children under the age of 6, with Rebecca receiving a pension of 21 shillings per week from March 1917, which equates to £51 per week in current terms. His father, Joseph, was a company sergeant major with 13th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles, and he was killed on 28th June 1916 at the age of 48 when a German shell exploded amidst a company of men forming up in the village of Martinsart. John McCoy is commemorated on the memorial tablet for Christchurch, and Joseph McCoy is commemorated on the memorial tablet in St Aidan's Church of Ireland on Blythe Street. Both memorial tablets are now on display in the latter church. Robert Lough was born on 21st April 1896 at Tamar Street to Alexander Lough and Elizabeth Murdoch, and the family was living at Welland Street in 1901 and were still living in the same street in 1918. Robert was employed at the Workman Clark Shipyard when he enlisted with 8th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles and was deployed to France in October 1915. He was serving with the Signallers section when he was killed in action on 2nd July 1916, aged 20, and is buried in Knightsbridge Cemetery at Menil-Martinsart in France. He is commemorated on the Workman Clark Belfast Shipyard Memorial and on the War Memorial Organ in St Patrick's Church of Ireland, Ballymacarrat. His younger brother William is also commemorated on the family memorial. He was a junior engineer officer on MV Singhalese Prince when she was torpedoed and sunk by German submarine U-111 on 20th September 1941 whilst transporting a cargo of manganese ore and pig iron from Bombay to Liverpool. William Dunbar was born on 5th February 1897 at Tamar Street to William Hugh Dunbar and Mary LOUGH, and the family was living at Downpatrick Street by 1916. He was a cousin of Robert LOUGH, as his mother was the sister of Alexandra LOUGH. William was employed by the Irish Distillery Limited at Connswater when he enlisted with 8th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles and was deployed to France in October 1915. He was 19 years old when he was killed in action on 2nd July 1916 and is buried in Beaumont Hamel British Cemetery in France. William and Mary Dunbar suffered further tragedy the following month when their third son, Robert LOUGH Dunbar, died in a tragic accident at the age of 17. Robert, who was an apprentice boilermaker, was bathing with some companions at Musgrave Channel when he got out of his depth and drowned, despite a rescue effort by John McMurdy of Vicarage Street. William George Jess was born on 18th October at Annaclog near Hillsborough to Robert Jess, a weaver, and Agnes Law, and the family was living at Great Georgia Street in 1901. The family was living at D Street when Robert Jess died of pernicious anemia in February 1912. William George Jess was working at the Queen's Island shipyard when he enlisted with 17th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles, and he was deployed to France with 8th Battalion in October 1915. Rifleman Jess was admitted to No. 3 Casualty Clearing Station on 6th July 1916 with gunshot wounds to the head which had entered the cranium, and was transferred out of the war zone on No. 4 ambulance train the following day. He died of his wounds at King George Hospital in London on 12th July at the age of 24 and was buried in Dundonald Cemetery 3 days later. He is commemorated on the memorial tablet for Ballymacarrat Methodist Church, but his name is not recorded on the Harland Wolff Queen's Island memorial tablet. William James GINN, whose wife Elizabeth had died in 1908, lost 2 sons in July 1916, and a son-in-law, stoker Robert Hunter, died when HMS Hawke was sunk on 15th October 1914. Robert Thomas GINN was born on 25th July 1885 at Curtis Street, and he was a labourer in the rope works and living at the family home in Woodley Street in 1901. William Henry GINN was born on 3rd February 1887 at Caroline Street and was at the Balmoral Industrial School in 1901. They both enlisted with the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers around 1906 and were stationed in the Far East with 1st Battalion in 1911 and in India in August 1914. Both landed at Y Beach on the Gallipoli Peninsula on 25th April 1915 before their battalion was relocated to France in March 1916. Robert Thomas GINN was 30 years old when he was reported as missing on 1st July 1916. And is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Sergeant William Henry GINN was mentioned in General Sir Ian Hamilton's dispatch dated 11th December 1915. On 16th May 1916, the London Gazette reported that Sergeant GINN had been awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for conspicuous gallantry when leading an assaulting party. On another occasion, he also displayed great coolness and resource in action. Sergeant William Henry GINN was 29 years old when he was killed in action on 4th July 1916 whilst on a patrol, and he's buried in the Hamel Military Cemetery at Beaumont Hamel in France. William Ravey was born on 8th June 1890 at Chatterley Street to John Ravey, a shipyard riveter, and Elizabeth Hughes, and the family was living at Parkgate Avenue in 1901. The family belonged to the Baptist Church, and William was recorded as being a plumber in 1911. William married Agnes Glenn on 9th July 1912 at Craiga Presbyterian Church, and they had one son called John, who was born on 7th May 1913 at Willowfield Street. William enlisted with 17th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles and was deployed to France with 8th Battalion in October 1915. Agnes and John Ravey were living on Woodstock Road when William was reported missing on 2nd July 1916, aged 26. Rifleman William Ravey has no known grave and is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Agnes Ravey received a dependence pension of 15 shillings per week from February 1917, which equates to £36 per week in current terms. William Ravey is commemorated on the modern Sydenham Roll of Honour. Alfred William Kerr was born on 7th June 1898 at Saunders Street to Joseph Kerr, a carpenter, and Annie Erskine, and the family was living at Beachfield Street in 1911. Alfred Kerr enlisted with 17th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles and was posted to 10th Battalion on the Western Front after December 1915. He was 18 years old when he was killed in action on 1st July 1916 and is buried in Dundonald Cemetery at Thiepval in France. He is locally commemorated on the memorial tablet in Mount Pottinger Methodist Church. 3 sons of the Reverend George Riles Wedgwood and Elizabeth Elliot served in the Great War, and 2 were killed in action on 1st July 1916. George Riles Wedgwood was a Methodist minister, and the family was living at Temple Gardens in Rathmines in 1901. In 1908, the family home was at Claremont Street, and George was minister of Sandy Row Methodist Church. In 1911, the family home was at the Mount, and George was minister of Mount Pottinger Methodist Church. In 1916, the family home was at College Gardens, and George was minister of University Road Methodist Church. George Riles Wedgwood died of chronic cardiac degeneration at Malone Avenue on 22nd August 1917 at the age of 72. Elizabeth Wedgwood later lived at Egerton on North Road. George Alexander Wedgwood was appointed as an engineer lieutenant in the Royal Navy in 1915, and he survived the war. Gilbert Colclough Wedgwood and Philip Egerton Wedgwood both received commissions with 14th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles in October 1914 and were deployed to France in October 1915. They are both commemorated on the memorial tablets for University Road Methodist Church and for Methodist College. Gilbert Colclough Wedgwood was born on 10th December 1893 at New Grove Avenue in Dublin and was a clerk with the Ulster Bank. He held the rank of lieutenant with 109th Company Machine Gun Corps when he was killed in action on 1st July 1916 at the age of 22 and is commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial in France. Locally, he is also commemorated on the memorial tablets for Foyle College and the Ulster Bank. Philip Egerton Wedgwood was born on 12th September 1897 at Crossthwaite Park East in Dublin and was 18 years old when he was reported as missing in the War Office casualty list dated 6th July. Lieutenant Philip Egerton Wedgwood was attached to 16th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles when he died and is buried in Mill Road Cemetery at Thiepval in France. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.